ladies and gentlemen. My name is Hi, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Robin Anderson, and it's my great pleasure to join you here at the FAO CG Pavilion, and we really appreciate the partnership of the Rockefeller Foundation at this space. It's a really special opportunity for agriculture to get the attention it deserves in the context of the UNFCCC. We all know that agriculture is a vital part of the global economy. It's literally the lifeblood of our daily meals. And the current discussions related to climate change and the current area around are vital because we must carry on the inclusion of agriculture and food in the overarching climate change discussions. So in the next few days, as we're talking about the Coronavia round, we're really keen to talk about the future of agriculture and food negotiations here at Climate Change. But we also want to talk about the future of agriculture and food in terms of the youth and the talent that will be brought into this sector on a go-forward basis. So it's my great pleasure in my role as Director General for the International Agri-Food Network to bring to you a very distinguished group of people who are doing a lot of work on how we get involved in agriculture and food systems. So I'm going to introduce them one by one to share a little bit about their programs. And immediately next to me is Caroline Immonde, who is the Director General of the International Dairy Federation. Caroline has worked all over the world and has a great passion for science as well as the agriculture and food sector. And Caroline, can you tell us a little bit about some of the programs IDF is doing for youth?
Would love to, and thank you for the invitation. I know you've noticed I'm no longer part of the youth category, but I can guarantee you that in my team, I do have very young collaborators that are very influential. So succession, the improvement, the presence of youth within the dairy sector is key. It's key for every sector. We all know that we need diversity, we need inclusion, but we need the new ideas, and we need also experts. So that's something that has been core to IDF, and actually we have it as our priority. It's part of our priority goals. One project I wanted to mention to you is a project that we've launched this year, and it's called the Early Career Scientist Award for IDF, and we wanted to reach out to young scientists to interest them in the sector of dairy and gave them an opportunity to showcase their project of work within our community. And every year we have the IDF World Dairy Summit, and we invited the winners to showcase their work at the event. It was a great success, and one actually of the project that won this year was actually relating to the commitment of dairy sector and in the food system and sustainability, and that was one of the projects that won this year. The other project I wanted to mention is the IDF Dairy Innovation Awards, which actually was linked to the Sustainable Development Goals. And this year we had winners that were also coming from from the younger category. And I will really encourage all of you young entrepreneurs to showcase your innovation, because that's the objective, is to inspire, to encourage innovation, and to showcase the dynamism, the technology, and the relevance of our sector. And I'm a dairy preacher, so obviously I'm going to talk to you about the dairy sector. But if we want to engage people and young people to join, then we need to show relevancy and our impact, because that's what you're all about. You want to make a difference. And in the dairy sector, you can, because it starts from farming, then to science, to testing, to processing, to health professional, to marketing, to communication. There's a whole range of things you can do into the sector. And that's what we do every year. We have communication activity, and particularly for women in science, there's a day in February, it's usually February 11, for women and girls in science. And we actually use it as an opportunity to showcase role models. Because at the end of the day, that's also important to show that, and particularly for women empowerment. And I can say, I am proudly the first female Director General of the organization in 120-year existence. So, you know, go girl, it's possible.
I love that, Caroline. So, and let's hope that we have 120 years to go of women in this role, and that will come from other great young women in the agri-food sector. It's my pleasure to introduce Rana Eldasuki, who is the Sustainability Manager for Nestle. And during the recent FAO World Food Forum, where there was a youth forum, Nestle actually did a fantastic presentation about this accelerator program that they've launched to encourage that next generation of small and medium entrepreneurs into the agri-food sector. Reina?
Thank you so much for having me today. So at Nestle, we have sustainability promise to advance regenerative food systems at scale. And part of this promise, of course, is our Nestle Needs Youth initiative. This initiative aims to have 110 million youth economic jobs to provide 10 million youth to provide opportunities to 10 million youth by 2030. So we engage young people across 3 pillars: agripreneurship, entrepreneurship, and employability. As an example, under the Nestle Needs Youth entrepreneurship pillar, we launched our Nestle Needs Youth entrepreneurship platform in August. So this is a virtual platform where young people and innovators can learn and submit their ideas in order to recreate a regenerative food system. As an example, in 2018 in Egypt, we had a global prize for youth, in which a group from Egypt actually won the prize. It was a $150,000 CHF prize for having an innovative idea. And this is how we actually are always encouraging our youth worldwide.
That's fantastic. Now, did I hear you say 10 million? 10 million?
Yes, 10 million youth.
10 million youth
by
in this
2030,
accelerator program.
yes.
Amazing number. Now, next over to Chidibele. Chidibele has a really impressive academic background. He is the center leader for the Center for Climate Change Adaptation and Mitigation Studies at the African University of Science and Technology in Abuja. And Chide, I'd love to know how you're sort of following up on this work that Caroline was talking about, bringing this next generation of young scientists into the fold.
All right, thank you for having me. In Nigeria, the center was born as a result of challenges we are having in Nigeria, West Africa, and Africa as a whole. The university is one of the initiatives of Nelson Mandela Institute. And what we are doing is aggregating farmers, but we are much focusing on the agro waste, and because we know that when we plant these crops and they photosynthesize with the CO2, and then you harvest your crops, and if you do not manage the waste, then it goes back, it releases the greenhouse gas that goes back to the atmosphere. So how do we harness this? So we've done a lot of work, research in trying to look at some of these crops, characterize them, valorize them as energy, bioenergy crops, and then try to see how we can also capture the CO2s if we are taking them through processes of conversion to get products or some kind of energy. But more so on those CO2, how do we sequester them? Because across most of the areas in Nigeria, in Niger and Cameroon, where we have farmers, mostly in the rural areas, when engaging them, we have also launched what we call Afro-Fuel Initiative, which Afro-Africa, the FEW is food, energy, water, we switched it over, trying to aggregate farmers. And then we have young people, we have capacity building programs for people from secondary school to university, and then even postgraduate to bring them on board, because we believe that if we build capacity from that level, they're going to go into agricultural sector and make a great change. So there are other things also we are doing, but just want to cut it short. As we move on, I can discuss about that. Thank you.
That's fantastic. I'd love to pick up on your point about recruiting people to STEM early on, science, technology, engineering, and maths. Is that the logic? Is you're not going to have the next generation of scientists unless you're investing right at the beginning?
Yes, of course, because the we need to start. We need to have what will I say, continuity plan, because we are in an area where people can have this interest, and we're having the past 3 weeks, the country has been facing flood, almost half of the country, with massive flood that has submerged houses, and then we are now facing food insecurity, most of their crops and farms. So that will discourage a lot of people. Why will I go and do that and then all my crops are submerged? We're also facing issues like insecurity terrorism, where you have the herdsmen moving with their cattle and then destroy the crops and all of that. So how do we bring the young people? We're also working on having digital markets, and maybe I can talk about that later, but having a digital market that can help the farmers to get their products, across every part of the country, even to other African countries, that this product, we have it here. We have instances in some states where we call the food basket of the nation, and the people in their farm have, for example, tomato, for example, and they have a large, vast land where they have tomatoes, and there's no market, and nobody to reach out to them, and then all of those have to waste. There are no processing industries in those areas. So how do we develop a digital market that people will get to know, and every other part of the country we know that, okay, this is what we have, and this is how much of this we are sending to other parts of Nigeria based on the demand through the digital technological system that we're going to develop. So we have people, researchers, who are working in that area, and they're all young people. We have developed a program, even from undergraduate level, where in their thesis, they are going to look at start working on some of those things along with masters and PhD students. And we don't just want to do research and keep it there. We want to also commercialize it. So we're also in touch with the federal government of Nigeria, and they have our support. We have their support to go on to develop some of those things, and there are funds available, and we're only looking for people to join us now to get the work done.
That's fantastic. We'll come back to some of those themes. Keep the microphone there. We'll go on to Mitchell. Mitchell, Chide was just talking about the importance of continuity plans. And I can't think of a sector more than farming that has a continuity plan issue. When we've got many countries having farmers hitting average ages of 60s, and I think one or two even in their 70s as an average age. You are a young man who is a rancher in Canada. You're involved in an association, the Canadian Cattle Association, that's actually got a program to get young people into the sector. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, thank you, Robin. Succession planning is a huge part of the agricultural industry, and at the Canadian Cattle Association, we've got two leading programs, youth development programs, and one is a mentorship program. It's called the Canadian Cattle Young Leaders, and it's a program that invites young agricultural individuals from across the sector. They're young farmers and ranchers, they're animal veterinarians, nutritionists, students, and they get paired up with a mentor in the Canadian beef industry, but they get the opportunity to lead in the area that they want. It's 9 months, and it's just an overall great opportunity for youth to engage and be active in the industry. And the other program that we have is the Canadian Cattle Youth Council, which is a subsidiary of the CCA. And so they get to sit on the CCA board in an ex officio fashion and witness firsthand policy development at our level. There's 10 delegates from all across the country. And so, apologies, we get a wide diversity of youth and the next generation from all across Canada. And really the biggest part of both of these programs is to promote engagement and involvement from youth in the agricultural industry. And so, yeah.
That's fantastic. Great to hear about the board experience as well, because I think that policy mentorship is also about the next generation of leadership. Now, speaking of next generations, the immediate past president of the International Agricultural Students Association, Omar Farhat, is here, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about what the association is doing to get people into the agri-food sciences writ large around the globe.
Okay, thank you very much. Very happy to be here today as a young Moroccan and as the former president of the International Association of Students in Agricultural and Related Sciences, which is the world's biggest student association in the field of agriculture. And oldest, actually. We have been existing since 65 years. This is to tell you that young people or students have realized long time ago that by coming together we can only be better. And during the 50s, several student organizations from different fields of study, from medicine, from agriculture, from veterinary studies, came together and created international networks. And we are no different. In 1957, in Tunisia, 8 member countries, students from 8 different countries around Europe and Africa, decided to create this network of agriculture students called IAS. Today we are over 10,000 members in over more than 50 countries, which makes us the largest in this field of study. And if I want to talk about what we are doing, I will have to spend 2 hours. But as my dear friend and current president Thomas always says, I would like to summarize it in three words. We call it the triple A: aspiration, advocacy, and action. When I say aspiration, I mean that young people are aspiring to engage with different organizations. We have worked wonderfully with Robin, Emerging Ag, and International Agri-Food Network, and different organizations. We are here at the Food and Agriculture Pavilion, and last year we signed our first letter of agreement with the FAO worth 35,000 euros to accelerate youth for climate resilient agriculture. So we were able to co-create this program with them, not just create. And I'm just going to talk about this a bit later in the discussion, and to tell you a bit about the struggles we have and the difference between creating and co-creating with the different organizations. But it's here to tell you that we work with student organizations, with different NGOs, with different UN bodies, even the private sector, to deliver the outcomes we want and the ambition we want for the climate, for the food and agriculture policy. The second A is advocacy. We created last year a think tank, the Food and Agriculture Youth Institute, to be able to deliver key messages, calls to action from the bottom, from the roots to the decision makers and to the world leaders in the food and agriculture sector. So we were able to write position papers on behalf of agriculture students surrounding different topics. For example, last July, in Morocco, we decided to write a position paper on water scarcity because it's been an increasing issue in the food sector. So we were able to draft that, and we are here defending it at COP and at World Food Forum a few weeks ago and different events. This takes me to the last A, which is action. So we have on the ground different projects in over 25 locations, projects called the Village Concept Projects, where we co-develop with local communities, in rural communities, different development projects in the field of agriculture, in farms, in different areas, where we help them build their communities, but also push forward the sustainable development goals and climate action agenda.
It's fantastic. A few questions for you. One is, in the 65 years that the organization has been around, do you feel like you're in a better position now than when you started? Has it been harder to get students into agricultural sciences? Where are we on the curve?
So, well, it's always hard to get students on board, especially, I mean, it's always different between areas from the global north, from the global south. But in the 65 years, I would say that people are realizing every day that it's always better when you do it together. I'm just telling you this. I come from Morocco, in a very small town, and I'm here today at COP, and I cannot tell you the amount of opportunities I was able to get by joining this international network. Not to I mean, a lot of things made us become what we have been today, but it's always linked to the realization that of young people that by joining an international network of agriculture students, you can only promote the exchange of knowledge, the exchange of ideas, the mutual understanding, and we are seeing wars and many things happening around the world, and we come to the realization that we can only be better by being together.
I love that. Now, in terms of being together and working on climate, because we're here at the Climate COP, what are some of the programs you just touched on very quickly? What is the climate angle to some of the efforts that you're making, not only these broader peace-building initiatives?
So the climate angle, there are different aspects we are doing. So first, obviously, since we are the largest student organization in the field of agriculture, it's important to raise awareness. So we have different social media channels, different events, different campaigns, opportunities where we share what we are doing, sharing information about climate change, how we can do to mitigate, but most importantly to adapt, because we have really big presence in the global south, and adaptation is really, really important. So we have worked together with the Global Center on Adaptation. Thomas has organized several parts of the Youth Adaptation Summit in Rotterdam, where we brought different students and young people across the world to accelerate adaptation. We have co-organized last year, where you were a speaker there, the Youth in Agriculture for the Climate Adaptation Summit, where we brought students all over the world and pushed them to accelerate adaptation in their countries and in their local communities. But most importantly, what we are doing in terms of climate change is our involvement at COP. So we are really involved in the Coronivia negotiations. For example, at this exact moment, we have a meeting with one of the experts on Coronivia, so we can showcase our statement and see what we can do and which bilateral meetings we need to schedule with different parties, so we can push forward Coronivia. And of course, not only Coronivia, but because we always need to keep food and agriculture on the agenda at COP, because it has not always been the case. And now we see that Coronivia is kind of being fade away, and lots of issues and the problems surrounding Coronivia. So we're also here to push forward the food and agriculture agenda.
Music to, I think, our collective ears in this room. Do you think an agriculture committee, is it a work plan? Is it an extension of Coronivia? Which would you like to see? Sorry, would you like to see Coronivia extended? Would you like to see more work on either an agriculture committee or a new work plan? How do we keep that food and agriculture stream front and center?
Difficult question. I think it's up to the parties, obviously, to deliver new programs and new ideas surrounding food and agriculture. But obviously, I think we need to push forward the conversation on Coronivia, because it's not yet done. A lot of parties, a lot of countries are not agreeing on it. And we see that just for one terminology, like, for example, agroecology, few countries are just not agreeing on it. So we also need to define better the terminologies. And unfortunately, at these COPs, we see that it takes a lot of time and a lot of energy, and like countries keep on talking and just repeating the same things, and it just doesn't move forward. So I would say for Coronivia, I would, in my own personal opinion, to just keep extending the discussion, but also to co-create again, not only create, but with civil society organizations and particularly youth, create new programs surrounding food and agriculture.
So exciting. We'll come back to co-creation, but you also, Omar, mentioned Rotterdam, which I know has a special place in the heart of IDF. Caroline, what are some of the things that have arisen from your sector's perspective as you're bringing people into things like your Rotterdam commitment and your work on climate change, how are you bringing specifically not only the nutrition elements that have traditionally been part of your work, but also the climate element to these young innovation programs?
Thank you, Robin. And I think we've got, the good basis of that discussion that you just mentioned. You've talked about networking, collaboration, and it is what it is. And you mentioned Rotterdam. In 2016, IDF and the FAO co-signed the Declaration of Rotterdam. That was the global commitment of the sector to development, UN SDGs, as well as reporting and measuring. And based on that, we had launched last year the Pathways to Dairy Net Zero. So a very concrete example of action. I really love your 3 words because that's everybody should be doing the same thing. Aspiration, advocacy, and action. And that's what we do. And you're right, Robin, that when we talk about sustainability, there's different pillars to it. And we need to make sure that we balance all of them and that we don't forget. Because sustainability is important. We talk about socioeconomy, we talk about the environment, but it's also important that we balance the nutrition, we make sure we ensure livelihood, particularly women empowerment, youth empowerment, and agriculture is a channel for that. And it is interesting to see that you still have lots of interest for the youth in agriculture, because in many countries, actually, it is core to art of communities. And it is important. We've talked about succession plan. In the dairy sector, as in many sectors, succession is key. We need to make sure that there will be people to farm tomorrow morning. And this is very important. And that's why when we try to focus on the innovation, we talk about digital dairy, we talk about breeding, we talk about the science behind it, because it's exciting to the young generation, and they need to see it's possible within agriculture. That agriculture is not like boring and old style. No, agriculture is actually changing. It's dynamic. It's very vibrant. And we need to make sure we've got the people that will be supporting agriculture for the future, because we're actually nourishing the world. And it's a noble profession. And I'm always happy to see young farmers. And I work for farmers, so farmers are in my heart. But it is a tough job. It's a family job. It's a lifestyle. And it's important that we contribute to value it. Because at the end of the day, you will not want to join an industry that is not valued. And it's important during discussion, particularly on climate as well, that we not forget that we actually try to nourish the planet. And we're doing it with respecting the resource we have, and we're doing the best practice we can to make sure that we live a planet healthy for the next generation. So that's all that we do, and we try to encourage and inspire, and that's why we have those projects. We have innovation awards just to give ideas, and actually one of our winners was actually a young entrepreneur from UK, and he won the innovation award for sustainable packaging for butter. He actually has, you know that typically butter is in aluminum paper, and he actually developed a recyclable type of paper for butter. And he was so excited. It was nice to see, because it was clearly one of his first international awards. And you're right, international recognition, being part of international network, actually give you a place at the table. And that's very important. And we hope that we actually, that place for you, that we have open heart and open arms so we can work together.
I love that story about the innovation. Is somebody like that, for instance, run a potential for the SME Accelerator program later on when he wants to commercialize this recyclable wrapper? What kind of climate angles are there for the groups that are in your program?
Okay, so by 2050, the world population will reach 10 billion people, and this will make food supply more sustainable food supply more challenging than ever. So having young people that have ideas and making them grow is what we need. So this means building their knowledge and skills, testing their ideas in real-life situations, providing the expert feedback and financial support they need to take their ideas to the next level. So at Nestle, we help equip youth with the skills, experience, and mindset to put their ideas for a climate-smart world into practice. So that's what we can help with. We help people from end to end understand, develop their ideas into real things.
Real things. How do you apply? Can people from Omar's association apply if they're starting jobs? Starting
Yes, of
businesses?
course. It's open for everyone. It's
Everybody.
actually an online platform, and anyone can apply, can join.
That's
Then,
fantastic. Well, maybe, Chidebele, you were talking about value chains in tomatoes in Nigeria. And we know that there's a huge issue with food waste and loss, and tomatoes are a great example. How are you finding that the people who are working on those things are able to get businesses started, to get that value-added processing happening? Do you see much of that kind of acceleration of young people into future roles that nobody could have imagined before?
Yes, yes, of course. But I would like to start addressing this from some of the fundamental issues. In Nigeria, for example, I took time to travel to those places, taking risk, knowing fully well the security implication, and I realized that one, the young ones are losing the desire, the interest in agriculture. You have the old ones who are doing it; they are getting old, and we don't have policies. Because whatever we want to do as researchers or youth or whatever, you have to do it on a good enabling environment with right policies and legislation. We also have issues of infrastructure. For example, you produce your food item. How do you transport it to other places? And then youths are looking at this and they're getting discouraged. If I go to have this crop produce, how do I transport them? If I produce them and I want to process them, what are the policies around them? How do I access finance, loans, and all of that? So we've had not just Nigeria, but in some part of the sub-Saharan. Lack of commitment on the leaders, on the governments to set up that enabling environment. Or enabling environment, I'm talking about finance and some frameworks that will help them to work well and all of that. Then also we now have issue of security, insecurity. So they are getting also discouraged from that angle. So what do we do? Even with the center, we are trying to get people to have an intentional desire, through engaging them and partnering and even getting them access to loans to purchase machines for the agriculture. Most of the agricultural activities you have in Nigeria, they're not mechanized. So because of some of these lack of access to loan. So we are working on that to also see how we can engage some organizations to provide these loans for them. We also have engaged the government that through some of our initiatives, we can provide this, we can monitor it to the end, and we are getting the youth involved into it. Another issue again we have, not just Nigeria again, but I've realized in the sub-Sahara, is the educational curriculum. Does it address this problem? Answer is no. I'm glad that when he talks about, and she buttressed it, connecting to the international networks, that helps. But if you focus to the educational structure or the curriculum we have, it does not address the problem. It is not even attractive. I remember going to the School of Engineering, and I was looking for which one is attractive. Should I go for mechanical or petroleum? And there was agriculture and bioresource engineering. I felt this is just for the poor people. Let me go and study petroleum. And then I studied petroleum, worked in oil and gas, and then found myself back again in trying to look at how to harness the biomass waste that you generate from agricultural activities and then transform it to energy, and at the same time make sure that we don't impact to the climate, to the atmosphere. So this is area we need to build capacity among the youth. So they need to understand there's a long value chain, we need to deal with. Even in the biomass we're talking about, today we talk about oil refinery. Why can't we talk about biorefinery? Why are we not putting much attention to it? Why can't we look at crops that have bioenergy potentials and then have them planted everywhere? By the way, we have an initiative for tree planting, which is commencing next year with the National Agency we call it Green Wall Agency in Nigeria, with another agency from Switzerland. What we want to do is to plant 10,000 trees in the middle belt of Nigeria, not just for some kind of biodiversity beautification, but they also have some economic values. And we've also evaluated that the return on investment for those crops is almost 5%, almost 35%, and which is huge, and it's going to be a job for the young people. And I would also like to say, even at the center where I lead, I'm not up to 40, but I usually ask people, please define for me what age is youth. So when they talk about youth now, I'm scared. I'm like, am I going out of the youth range because I want to remain as a youth? So in a couple of years, maybe 3, 4 years, I'll be above 40. But will I still be categorized as a young person? So I would like to also know, maybe somebody can tell me. So at the center, we don't have, the researchers we have that are working on this and aggregating the biomass characterization and valorization we are trying to do so that we can help the government to design policies around it. Yesterday, we were looking at the energy transition plan, and we're looking at the energy mix for Nigeria. All the plans that they have, you realize that the one that addresses the biomass, which I think speaks to the agricultural sector as well, because when you do that, you're going to generate jobs in that sector. So imagine when you have a large farm, and at the end of the day, the farmers are incentivized to not to gather the agro waste, and of course they said they seed or whatever produce that they have, but not just that, they also have to gather the agro waste, make some little money, and then those are transformed to something valuable. We have at the center currently that is working on water hyacinth, and it will surprise you the potentials and the values you can drive just from water hyacinth. I worked on guinea corn, this sweet sorghum, and trying to characterize and valorize it as a bioenergy material, and it has a huge potential. And this is one crop that from Nigeria to Niger, Guinea to Mauritania, northern Ghana, northern Togo, this is on the vast land, this is what they produce. Year in, year out, harvest the crops, the cobs, the stalks and everything are just wasted there. There is a knowledge gap. The farmers don't even know that those stalks and all of that can be used. If they cannot be used or taken through some process, they can sequester it. Because when you leave it to decay and all of that, it releases greenhouse gas into the atmosphere. So it releases greenhouse gas into the atmosphere. So if we have a way of, we measure, really we measure greenhouse gas emissions for farmers in Africa, in sub-Sahara. Let me focus on where I'm very much, I have much knowledge of what is going on. You will see that they are contributing hugely to the greenhouse contribution. So they might think the crops sequestered the CO2, but when those waste decay, it returns back those things to the atmosphere. So I was having a discussion with somebody in Switzerland who were trying to partner in the tree planting. He said what he does is when he harvests, he gathers those materials because they account for him his carbon footprint. So, but he harvests, he picks them and he sequesters them geologically. By that, he doesn't have much carbon footprint. But in my own opinion, I would want a situation where we don't sequester it, we convert it, we process it. We make value from everything, just from it. So we take it through process. We can get biochar, we can use as desiccants and all of that. We can get hydrogen, we can get energy, and then we can control the CO2. So we need knowledge, we need capacity building, and that is what we are doing. We organize seminars, we're engaging students. We have the Afrofuel, which is dealing with the Nexus Food Energy and how we can couple this with carbon capture, utilization, and sequestration, which IPCC has identified as one of the best technologies that can help us take away the unhabitable CO2 in the atmosphere. So our farmers need to understand this. They need to understand their contribution of on carbon footprint. So in my region again, I'll talk about the sub-Sahara again. They are not aware of this. There is need for education. There is need for capacity building. There is need for, if it requires funding, and if it requires, because you might need to incentivize them for people to be motivated to do that. Otherwise, why will I be gathering that when I can just move on? So, but if they can make more money from it, yes, they can. And then you get what you want, and then you transform it to something else. So that's the area the center is looking at. And we want people, we want partners, we want students to get involved. And I would like everybody here to also, and everybody here, the center is open for everyone, and we want to see what you're doing, we want to collaborate. We have a lot of projects. One thing that I always do is, I'm rounding up quickly, is people go for the fund, or they go for the grant before the project. Identify the need, identify projects. If it's a project that you will need to design policies and then sell the policies to the government before you get to that point, design it. We are doing one now, and we're engaging the government, and we push for it to be legislated. Once that is done, we're in the biomass sector, we will move on to implement the bigger picture, and that gives us an enabling environment. So sometimes we do talk, but we have to sit down and look at where do we really need to work to create an enabling environment. We have politicians who don't have the skills, so they don't really care. So you need to do something. You need to help them formulate these policies, because you have the knowledge base. Formulate these policies, send it to them. We go to National Assembly and we're telling them this is this. They don't even know what we're talking about. And then they are the first to say, remove this. And then we have to find a way to convince them. And then they buy the idea. So we need to, as young people, also need to get involved and all of that. Policy and capacity building. Thank you.
Thank you, Chidi. There was such a rich discussion, and there's so much more to explore. I just want to check if your microphone is working over there, Mitchell. I know they swapped it out.
Check, check.
Check, check. We're good. So Chidi Bailey gave us a lot of things to talk about, but I'm going to go back to one of the earlier things that he was talking about, which is really about this question of empowering people with finance and the ability to be in the sector and for it to be attractive. In your mentorship program that you're running with more experienced farmers and younger farmers, to what extent is finance most likely to be the issue they're grappling with?
Yeah. For our programs, finance is a huge piece. The main kind of area that our programs explore is partnerships and collaborations with everywhere throughout the sector, and those is really what drives our programs. And it can be difficult to find the right partnerships to progress our programs, but finding finance is just a huge area where we are continually looking throughout the industry, throughout different sectors, and anyone who wants to be part of amplifying the voice of youth and of agriculture is, something that our programs are willing to explore in a variety of different ways with anyone from really any of the sectors.
Now, there was the excellent reference from Omar about the importance of co-creation, and Chidi picked up on this as well. When you have people on a board in an ex officio manner, do you feel that they're able to engage in co-creation? How do you make sure that the people in this program are getting not only a chance to be exposed to board practices, which sets them up for later career, but how does the council actually empower and co-create for those youth as well?
Yeah, I think our youth council program really, like Reina mentioned as well, is that it provides the tools and the training and allows or gives the confidence to the youth to be ready to have an impact in these discussions, especially at the policy level. And although it's in an ex officio manner, I think that their voice is heard, and many people around the table are willing to listen to the youth. So I think providing the tools and the training and a platform for the youth to be heard is kind of the main pillar of our youth program.
We absolutely have to hear youth voices, but we also have to listen to those voices, right? And I think, Omar, that's what you were talking about in terms of co-creation. Let's explore a little bit about that